from England, UK, a little town called Hull. And I currently do a podcast called Nick Needs to Know, which is discussing with different guests about career progression, what it's taken them to get to where they are today. So we talk about everything from today backwards, basically from the first pay packet up until now, and what that looked like for them, just to give everybody an idea. No two people have the same career path. There's no set mold. Everything is okay, and there might be somebody out there that can relate to each one of my guests who's had a similar sort of journey to get to where they are. That basically started for me as a bit of an outlet, because I always find I need something to focus on. I get hyper, like really hyper involved when I start something. I want to give it 100%, and usually starting something, I'm on my own starting it, so I can give it up quite easily, and then I move on to the next thing. But I found getting other people involved and guests involved kept me on track, and that kept my mind clear and focused. So that's who I am, and that is what I'm currently doing right now.
Perfect. So take us through your podcast. How was it for you at the very beginning of it, in its infancy, to where it is now today?
So to me, it's probably still in its infancy, because I have big dreams and big goals. So I still see it as a little baby. But from the very beginning, where I work for a large media company in the UK. So I'm surrounded by a lot of people that like to get involved in that sort of thing. So that's a bit of a bonus for me. That's helped me out a lot. So I've had guests left, right, and centre. So I've never really struggled to get voices onto my podcast and get people's stories out there, because of the size of the media company that we work for. So that was in the beginning. And now the guests are getting more to the point where people are asking if they can be on my podcast rather than me reaching out, which is good. So I see that as a kind of a turning point now. So hopefully I can continue with that momentum moving forward, and get bigger and better guests and better stories, and stuff like that.
When I first started my podcast here that you're on, it was an opportunity, as you mentioned, for me to just let things out. And a part of it was, am I really that crazy? There has to be people out there with crazier stories than what I would have, right?
Yeah.
And when you start bringing these guests on, you begin to realize, wow, I've read about this. Now I know someone that has gone through it. I didn't know this was a part of the world. Now I've met someone that is going through something that I didn't even think was even capable. Are you surprised at some of the stories and some of the guests that you've come across in your time?
Very, very surprised. So like yourself, you often think of your own life as very unique, and that sometimes you're in situations where you think everything's going wrong against you, and you're the only person that's suffering, and you're the only person that's had downfalls and the lows that you've had and the highs that you've had, and you just feel so trapped in your own thoughts. But talking to other people and listening to their story and having that opportunity, you think, yeah. I mean, for example, I had a guest on who was in his 50s, and he'd had 47 jobs in his career, 47 different jobs. Now, I didn't think that were possible to have that many jobs in such a, because unless he started working when he was 4 years old, he would have had like one job a year. But yeah, and then getting into the whys as to why he'd had that many jobs, and he later on in life found out he was suffering from ADHD and things like that, and he were always wanting the next shiniest thing, so to speak, and wanting to move on, and it cost him a couple of marriages, and he nearly he tried to commit suicide, and it just opened up a massive story. And you think, wow, there's more to people than the front cover of their book. But yeah, it does open your eyes to show you that you're not alone. You're not on your own in this journey. There's a lot of people going through a lot of different things, and just by talking and opening up and even just listening can be a massive help.
There was one guest I had where they're talking about polygamy. And I was so interested in that because as a man, right, you're like, who doesn't want 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, right? And then when you find out the lifestyle of it, you're like, okay, this isn't for me. I just can't. You begin to realize I have difficulty keeping up with one.
Yeah, definitely.
How am I going to do so many? But what I loved about it is that it was like a reflection of, let's say, 3 different worlds. It was a reflection of the world that I'm currently living. Like I'm looking at a mirror version of myself because there's someone similar. There's like a reflection, a mirror of a world that maybe I'm not a part of, such as the polygamy and maybe that type of world. And then there are some guests that I had that they're going through something. And I was like, Lord, please don't make me ever go through what they're going through, because it sounds so tragic. Were you able to relate your experiences with your guests on your show?
Yeah, definitely. Because ultimately, I think depression is it's just one thing, but there's lots of different shoots that come off that, lots of different whys, but it is ultimately one. I don't want to really call it a disease because it sounds negative, but it is kind of a disease, and it's just one thing, but there's a lot of things that come off that what can lead to depression. So yeah, there's a lot of relatable stories out there, and I could relate to certain guests and certain aspects of their stories, definitely. I mean, for me, it started when I was in my late 20s, and I didn't really know what it was until I was 30. And looking back, I was probably going through a build up towards depression for the last 10 years prior to that. So that was a kind of there was one thing that kind of like give me a wake up call to say, this is something important. You need to sort this out. And that happened when I was 30.
What do you think was the cause of you realizing, hey, something's not right? Is this depression? Is this something else? And what were your feelings when you're going through that moment in your life?
So the 10 years building up to it, I didn't know until I was looking back retrospectively at it that it was depression. So the actual moment was when I was 30, was when I'd gone through a massive change in life. So I'd been in a 10-year relationship that ended, and then I started a new relationship. So that were a massive change. Everything was different. My environment was different. And that kind of brought these actions and emotions and feelings that I was going through to the forefront, because it was someone else having to deal with it, who told me then at the time, look, this is not normal. You need to have this looked at. And we was on holiday. It's about, from where I live, we drove about 2 hours in the car to get to where we were on holiday. And my head just went, I just lost it. Not in a violent way or anything like that, but to the point where I just put a t-shirt on and I set off walking. I tried to walk the 2-hour drive that we'd just done back down highways, places I didn't even know where I was, and I didn't even know what I was doing. Something in my mind had just flicked, and I just set off walking, and that caused a lot of problems for the people that are around me that love me, enough for them to kind of sit me down and have like a mini intervention and say, look, we're not going to stop hounding you basically until you've been and got this sorted out. And that was the point. That was the turning point for me. And then that was what made me look back on the previous 10 years and think, yeah, an accumulation of what I was doing, the lifestyle I was living, the relationship I was in all added up and created that one thing that is depression that I spoke about. So that was the turning point. And I mean, to have that realization, it's not nice when you ask what I felt like and what I was going through. It's not a nice thing because you're in denial at the time. You do not want, and I mean, especially, I'm talking like 10, 11 years ago now. So I don't know what it was like over in the States, but in the UK, it's only just really becoming more spoken about and more of an okay topic to have at the forefront of a conversation is depression. So back then it was spoken about, but there was still a stigma around it. And I didn't want to have that stigma of, oh, Nick's got depression. And people trying to tiptoe around you and ask if you're okay, like you've got some sort of illness. When I hadn't, I just had a realization, and I was kind of embarrassed, but I worked through it with support from the people that I had around me at the time. And I think if I didn't have those people around me or surrounding myself with those people, I probably would have reverted back to what was my norm. But I got through it. But it was hard. It was a really hard time. I would say it was harder getting over it than it was going through it. That's what I would say.
And over here, many men experience depression, anxiety, and other mental health concerns. And for many of the points that you mentioned out is that they feel somewhat embarrassed, right? They don't want the label of, I'm a person with depression, I'm a person with anxiety. And then when you put on top of that, that they don't have as many resources to assist, and they don't have the support system that you described as well, many of them end up taking their own life. And it's a shame that they don't feel that they can come to someone, because for you to share that with me or whomever at that point in time in your life takes courage. And a lot of men, they want to be strong, right? They want to be independent, and they don't want to show that weakness. But I think we need to do a better job in saying that expressing how you feel is a sign of strength. Expressing what you're thinking takes courage, especially amongst other men, because sometimes we may joke, right? You and I may have like a friendly banter and things like that, but you should be able to come to someone and say, hey, Terrain, I'm struggling with this. I was in a 10-year relationship. I gave my all. I've invested so much of myself, but it has made me become this person that I don't really like. It's maybe become this person that I no longer want to be. When you're going through it and you're being reflective, you're trying to do that 2-hour walk, you went to your support system. What are some of the conversations that you're having within yourself during that time as you wanted to get better?
So the conversations I was having with myself were more along the lines of, I need to make a change. So I did not want to carry on doing what I was doing previously, because I knew that it would have been too easy then to revert back into that sort of lifestyle and way of living sort of thing. So I wanted to change everything from the inside out. So I started off with friends, which was a hard one, and social life. So I had to change that. I had to massively change that. So stop going out every Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Stop meeting up with the same people. And then I went from that into work. So I wanted to change my career. So when I was going through the depression, I was self-employed. I'm a bricklayer by trade. So I was earning some good money, but that gave me a lot of freedom, and it gave me a lot of, probably what I thought at the time was power, to be able to just do what I want when I want. And that was no good for me. So I needed to change my career. So I looked at joining the police force. I was unsuccessful at that because you needed some sort of a degree, like a university degree, to get into the police force. The next best thing was prison service. Now, the reason I picked the prison service or police force was because of the uniform and the structure. So I thought if I could bring some structure into at least 8 hours of my day, that would give me a bit of stability and change my mindset completely. And it did that. As soon as I put on that shirt and tie and my epaulets on my shirt, trousers on, pressed my trousers, pressed my shirt, I felt like I was structured. I had to do things a certain way, or I was getting fired. And the day was structured for the prisoners as much as it was structured for the staff as well. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that structure. That kept me on the right path for a good amount of time for me to get everything else outside of work in order and get my life back on track. So I have a lot to thank for the prison service. I'm no longer working in the prison service, but I have a lot to thank for the prison service for that aspect of helping me change who I used to be. And that's what I did to, and that's the conversations I was having. And I was successful at it. I don't think there was anything that I set myself to do to change that I failed at. And looking back, there were only easy things, like getting a different job. That's easy. Cutting off some of your friends, that's easy. Stop going out on a weekend, that's easy. When you look at it on paper, it's just easy things. But for somebody that's, those aspects of their life are engraved in them, it's really hard. And especially when you're trying to get over something like depression and anxiety, they're hard things to have to do because it's so easy to not do. But yeah, I was successful at all those things, and that helped me get back on the right path.
For those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and my social media and website, please subscribe, follow, and share for more incredible interviews like the one we have with Nick today. And we will be back for more. So stay tuned, everyone.